we're already seeing these nations take in consideration what's going to happen after November in terms of foreign policy for them and where that positions them. You'll notice when Trump was campaigning in his first presidential election, you had a lot of Aussie politicians kind of, that'll never happen. And boy, were they eating humble pie when he won that election. And it did affect, as far as foreign international negotiations was concerned, who are you going to send over? And I think everybody can see what's going on in the United States without stating it openly. You're not hearing them talk about it. They're going, this dude, when he comes back, will come back stronger than before, given what he's just gone through.
Before we start, we need to tell you up front we are not a licensed financial planning, accounting or law firm. This is simply an education program which will give you factual information. We do not give any general or specific advice around finance, business, investing, options trading, or anything else. That is not what this presentation does. Please see a licensed financial planner when it comes to any investment advice you need.
It's Edge Radio Australia time, of course, for The Greater Wealth, a show that I personally look forward to every single week. It's a great opportunity to sit down with Derek Whittaker and talk about the important subjects of the day, where the beautiful amalgamation, if we can call it that, we can call it many things, of politics and the world of finance. And it's also a great opportunity to cringe and have that internal tear that just comes when I hear Travis on the radio. It's a beautiful moment, mate. Good to see you, Derek. Great to see you. Great to everybody out there, by the way. Everybody jump on board, of course, and listen on the socials.
There's some heavy hitting going on the political front across the globe. We've mostly been focused on the United States, and we'll get to that. But in the past few days, we've seen a lot of going on as far as Europe is concerned. Now, you might be thinking, what has this got to do with economics? Well, for an investor, you always look at this and go, political stability is often a determination as to whether to put money into a project within a certain region. So, of course, with the fun of the United States of late, a lot of people are going, whoa, with all your borders and illegals coming across the border, would I want to buy US real estate right now?
Well, it would put fear into the investment sort of sector, wouldn't it?
And there's, the crossing of the channel has been an issue for a lot of the UK sort of politics. Let me focus on France and then I'll get to the UK. Okay. We've seen the elections and a protesting overnight going on in the streets. Mostly the left have been doing that. The New Popular Front coalition is winning the most seats there. What they've said is basically Macron did a quick little thing before the election where they were negotiating with the other parties and said, listen, let's push the New Popular Front to third, even though the New Popular Front had the most votes, because they've done a deal, they're probably going to form a government and be able to form it and take it that way. So majority of people in France want the New Popular Front, an alliance of 5 parties ranging from the far left to the socialists and ecologists. Sorry, they've taken, they could secure 182 seats. I beg your pardon, I'm getting them mixed up here. But the other ones, the more conservative party, the Resemblant National, they were looking to gain 168 seats. And because they had the most votes as a party, could take government, but because Macron has been doing deals with the other parties, 5 other parties, it looked like they may take government. So they're still doing the counting as we speak. But it's really interesting to see how this shakeup is playing out in France.
So true.
The city of love, and there's all this protesting going on. There are rumors that Antifa's involved with that sort of stuff.
Really?
But, it's hard to prove that sort of stuff. Follow the money trail, as they say. But, it's the left that, hey, we might be winning, so we'll go out and protest at nighttime. You get to wonder what the real agenda is there. But again, that shake-up, what effect will have that on the European markets as they open up throughout the week? Follow that with what's going on in the UK. We had Rishi Sunak say goodbye at Downing Street to number 10 there, now handing it over to a Labour government and Labour Prime Minister. They haven't had one of these in England for 14 years.
Right.
Now they've taken power in a bit of a landslide victory. It's just a real indication of enough is enough as far as the Brits are concerned.
Yeah, no, okay. It's also, to my mind, it's very disappointing that they feel that there's only one other option. Like, you've got to choose between 2, And
that sounds like Australia.
I know. Yeah, exactly. And the US and so many, right? Look, the outgoing Prime Minister was very unpopular, as I understand, and certainly I saw him doing a lot of damage to the UK. And a lot of people I know who are have moved to Australia, former UK residents, and go there reasonably often, say just the destruction of London in particular has been incredibly noticeable. That goes from the mayor level as well as the Prime Minister right through. Now, what I'm concerned about is bringing a Labor person in, right? Is this just going to be more destruction?
Well, what's been interesting on the other side of this is Nigel Farage has won a seat for the first time in UK's parliament. And he has been really talking conservatively, or not even conservative. I mean, I think he's just been talking common sense in many of his rhetorics as to what is going on. He's out there at the channel saying, look, here's the French escorting illegals into our country. What's going on? And he could really hold the balance of power as far as the parliament is concerned in the UK, because he's won the seat for the first time. He's tried many, many attempts. I think it's his 8th attempt. Wow. And of course, he held a seat on the European Parliament when they were part of the EU. But he hasn't been able to win one at home. And now it looks like he may be able to shake up the country with his Reform UK party. So you've got this sort of thing going on here where you've had a leftist government, Labor, take power, yet you've seen a rising of a one from left field, a new party come in and go, hey, we've actually may hold the balance of power here. And that's really interesting, that people are voting independently of the traditional parties as before.
Well, that happened in France as well with Le Pen. When she first came in, I think her party only had like a 4% vote. The election after that went to 23%, and they were pushing. The way the French works is first across the post. So she was actually pushing to run France. And now with the one that's just recently happening, one of her candidates running, the one where they lost, and she got 23% overall. He actually won the first round of voting by over 50%, where previously it was about 30%. So he actually won the seat without going to a second count. So I personally believe that Le Pen may actually end up being the leader of France, which I think would be an amazing thing. Right. In England, one thing I've got to just double check. So in Australia, Labor is very left wing. The Labor in France, are they also left wing? My understanding is they're sort of more centralist.
Yeah, I'm not across that. I've got in terms of the policy. Well,
this is why
they haven't, and to their fairness, they haven't had government for how many years?
But they still got to say these are what the issues that we're campaigning on and stuff like that. I thought they were like center left, where the guy that just left was like hardcore lefty, full on socialist.
Well, that kind of takes, certainly Macron was just a crazy left-wing extremist.
Macron's massively left. But the Uber driver now, what's his name from England?
Keir Starmer.
Yeah, Keir Starmer. I heard he's like absolutely full-on hardcore socialist.
Well, look, I've said this before a million times, but okay, look, I used to consider myself as a human being as being center-left, right? Like, now those ideas are considered to be far right, and I haven't changed. The line keeps moving. Now I want to actually take issue to the conservative, the term conservative, quite frankly, because people who are speaking common sense, they're not being conservative at all. They're speaking common sense. They're speaking for what I believe, certainly from my experience of other people, is what the majority of people in the world want. They're not conservative at all.
The term conservative means that you don't want nothing to change. You're happy with how it is. Don't change the system. So what's happened is the system has actually already changed. So effectively, you could argue that the progressives are actually the conservatives now, because just the terms between the two is sort of like flipping things. So because we've had a Labor government and all the Liberals in Australia are also pushing so far left, like the normal in Australia at the moment is to push to the left. So effectively, you could argue that's now the conservative. Well, the changing parties, like the changing beliefs, is like, no, we've gone too far to the left. We need to start bringing it back.
Yes.
And that's what's happening, is because we're going against the norm and they don't like it, both Labor and Liberal. So they're saying to call it people who do want to return back to, family values, having fair justice and all that. They're now calling them extremists because it's not what they want.
What's interesting was Liz Truss was the Prime Minister before Sunak and almost brought the whole entire system financially to ruin with the bond debacle that occurred. And you recall how that they basically had to put Sunak in as an emergency to fix up the mess. And of course, Liz was kind of the in-between Prime Minister since Boris Johnson, who of course led the Brits out of the EU, which, am I a Boris fan? I've got mixed views on the guy. I'm glad though that England is out of the EU for the
I
sake
don't-
of their sovereignty.
Oh, I thoroughly agree, and I don't think Boris particularly led them. I think that Boris just wanted to be Boris and wanted to be popular, and he would go with whatever from that point of view, he was rolling with what the public wanted, which is what you want a politician to do in the main. But I can see the mixed feelings. I mean, he's not a great human being, and he's got some very, very, very twisted ideas that make him quite left. So that was a very positive thing.
Yeah. So why are we bringing this to your attention? Well, it's going to be really interesting what plays out as far as the EU is concerned.
Yeah.
And of course, the EU, the dollar, the EU. The currency, I should say. It's not a dollar, it's an EU. That's going to be really interesting how this plays out. There is some talk I've heard of it weakening as well, along with the US dollar, as fiat kind of is being brought into question as governments have printed so much over the last couple of years to unsustainable levels. And so they like to talk about a correction, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show as far as that is concerned. But this is what's playing out. So as an investor, if you now go back across the pond to the United States, where does this place, what will happen, what's going through a lot of minds, if the Biden doesn't step down?
Okay.
And what is the future of America? Because let's face it, America is still the biggest stock market in the world. It is the biggest economy. So you've got EU with all this uncertainty going on with protesting at night in France. You've had this new fellow walk in as far as the UK Parliament is concerned with the new party. How left are they is going to be the question.
Sure.
How extreme are they? And yet is that going to be offset with Nigel Farage and his conservative group in there? Will they hold the balance of power once this all plays out and settles? And then you go across the pond to, of course, the camp in the Bidens, where they're facing, will Trump come back in? It's really going to be interesting from here as far as the northern politics is concerned, the powerhouses of the Western world.
The one that you haven't taken into account yet, which is in the same region as well, you got to remember, Italy has now had a very conservative leader for quite a while now. Now, imagine what happens. You've got a leftist leader in England. You get Trump coming into America, who would rather trade with a country that shares similar beliefs. How much trade is then going to be moved from England over to countries like Italy, where they do have conservative leaders?
Well, you've got this going on with the BRICS nations, obviously, right? So on the other side, so to speak, of it. So, yeah, of course, you're going to deal with the countries that you're aligned with, whether it be economically, obviously, but socially and ethically.
You recall that Boris had to do a lot of marketing of Britain when they left Brexit, because now they weren't part of the EU economy, and they now had to then find other partners to trade with. And of course, you saw him with ScoMo doing the Tim Tam push and all that sort of stuff going on. What will happen, I think, in England, the big one is Russia. What's going to happen with Russia? Now, of course, we've seen that Trump has come in and says, I could end this war like this. I would be doing it as the before I have office. What do they call him? The pre.
I know what you're saying.
Pre-elect, or what do they call him?
President-elect.
President-elect. Thank you. When he's president-elect, he says, I would be talking already then. It would be shut down.
Come on, let's be honest. He's already talking.
And what is fascinating is
listening.
Putin's listening. Putin's going, you know what, I'm open to what his idea is. Because let's face it, Putin has tried to do a ceasefire on a couple of occasions now, and it's been put down and rejected. Now, Zelensky is not happy about this, because if Trump gets in, there goes his fundraising as far as his war efforts is concerned. And so all this politics going on is going to affect a lot of world trade. It's going to affect a lot of the international bodies as well, how they've positioned themselves, the NATOs of this world, even the World Economic Forums of this world, even the World Health Organizations. Remember, Trump cut US funding from WHO while he was still in power. Much to their outcry, it was like 20 million just gone per year that they could no longer rely upon.
I think it was far more than that, wasn't it?
Well, this is prior to all that 19 stuff that went down.
Good point.
So, yeah.
I wasn't really paying attention. I thought you were coughing for legit.
I was coughing for legit.
I was about to say, cover your mouth. But anyway.
I don't know. You know what? Actually, just yesterday.
Sorry, my face mask wasn't on.
Giving me harder, Danny.
Actually, yesterday I felt quite. I felt like I was a member of the oligarchy. I really did. Yesterday suddenly I felt like my name was Zelensky or Biden or whatever.
What, did someone give you $1 million?
No. I was doing my washing, and after my wash, I was cleaning up, and I found $20 in my pocket, and I thought, oh, that's freshly laundered.
So yeah, just Courage is a Cure. Awesome show as
Fantastic
well.
show.
Please make sure you reach out to her on the good old social medias.
Definitely.
A couple of other quick shout outs to the Light newspaper.
Yeah, for sure.
They're going through a bit of a rehashing at
Yep.
the moment, which is fantastic.
And we're also, while we've got this opportunity, great to mention the fact that we're going to have Courage is a Cure as part of Edge, as far as we'll be distributing a lot of Robin's stuff, which is fantastic stuff. So
awesome.
Look, another person all about freedom and getting information out. So great to have that alliance there.
So Robin, while we've got here, chuck your link onto your
please.
socials into the chat, and I'll put it up on the screen as well for people to go watch. So I think just going with back to the Trump side of things.
Yep.
Zelensky's in a lot of trouble. I think a lot of the countries that have cracked the shits with America over the last 4 years, who have just now starting to join BRICS. So I'm talking India, Russia, Brazil, China, South America, and then a lot of the others like Saudi Arabia and a lot of the Arabic countries are also coming on board with it as well. I'm worried that there's too much damage has been done for Trump to be able to fix this. I think he's going to be able to stem the flow a lot, but I think it's going to be a lot where he's probably going to realize that those deals are already done. He'll probably try to save them. He'll save some. I don't think he'll save them all, but it's going to open up new markets, especially in other countries such as Italy. I think that's going to be really, really interesting to see what's going to happen from there. Wow, I accidentally pressed a button and put the thing up. Cool.
Oh, there you go.
I'm learning new shortcuts all the time. So yeah.
Oh dear. I know the whole thing. Trump can't just, as I said before, you can't just walk in there and he's not going to clean up in aisle 4. It's all going to be perfect again. But I do think this is going to be a seismic change, and I think that you're going to see a lot of weak world leaders actually have to step into play, and all of a sudden they're going to have to deal with the man with the mean tweets.
We're already seeing these nations take in consideration what's going to happen after November in terms of foreign policy for them and where that positions them. You'll notice when Trump was campaigning in his first presidential election, you had a lot of Aussie politicians kind of, that'll never happen. And boy, were they eating humble pie when he won that election. And it did affect as far as foreign international negotiations was concerned. Who are you going to send over? And I think everybody can see what's going on in the United States without stating it openly. You're not hearing them talk about it. They're going, this dude, when he comes back, will come back stronger than before, given what he's just gone through.
Now the other thing as well, just going back to the international negotiations, you got to remember, as Derek said, a lot of Australians turned their nose up at Trump, and when Biden took over, I think there's going to be some very, very severe consequences, especially for people like Kevin Rudd, who Trump's openly said he wants to fire as a US diplomat. I think a lot of the elites in Australia are going to get some very, very rude awakenings once Trump takes the power again.
Rudd is basking in the limelight of the Assange case at the moment, and he has been attributed by the ABC as one of the big players in the negotiations with the United States on that. It'll be interesting to see his role there, and I think you're going to really have to think Australia, you're definitely right. It's going to have to think very hard as to who it sends over to represent them.
Actually, okay, on that front, you've got Albanese, who is an incredibly weak man, right? Okay, I know he's leader of the country, but I'm telling you right now, he's a weak man. Perhaps is that an indictment of just how weak the Biden administration is, the fact that they take this opportunity when Biden is feeble and falling to bits to negotiate. If someone as weak as Albanese could negotiate with the Biden camp, right? And achieve what they needed to be achieved with Assange. I mean, isn't that an indictment of just how weak it is over there?
The big key, looking into the Assange case in terms of negotiation, it's claimed that the key negotiation point that the Australians put towards them, the DOJ, the US Department of Justice, was the fact that you're trying to get a prisoner out of Russia at the moment, who is an American journalist.
Yes.
What are they going to do? Is Putin going to turn around and say, well, you're doing the same thing with Assange? And,
of course.
And that was one of the leverage points that they used in the
but that's always, that's a lie, because that's always the situation. Always. Look, there's always been, Russians been holding on to some journalists. Americans do the same thing. This is just part of look, they're hostages, right? Okay, this is what goes on. This is part of negotiation. Sad, it's disgusting, but it's fact.
So the bit that shits me is I was watching the Ark, Joel Jamal, and they were doing a replay on it, and they were commenting on the ABC coverage of Julian Assange landing. And there was a ABC journalist. It was probably mid to late 40s. Had his glass, had to keep taking his glass off, wiping his eyes because he was having crappies. He's so happy that Julian Assange is finally home, and that you have a look at how many stories have actually run. Bagging out his dad, bagging out Julian Assange, what they're doing. I just find the entire coverage by the ABC to be one of the most hypocritical and most insulting things I've ever actually seen. So I hate it when people try and take credit for what other people have done.